So, what are 5 graphics cards from AMD that dared to challenge NVIDIA reign and emerged as the best? Let's talk. While NVIDIA has been hogging the spotlight, AMD's been quietly grinding away. Their graphics business kicked off with the takeover of ATI, and it wasn't just a business deal. It set the stage for years of stiff competition. It has been a brutal cage match, and AMD always landed jabs where it hurts. The Red Team has built a legacy not by copying NVIDIA but by following their own rules. The tech world loves its disruption, innovation, paradigm shifts, and AMD has given us all that. So, these 5 GPUs are not just milestones, they are proof that AMD can challenge a titan and make a real mark in the industry. In 2019, AMD unleashed the RX 5700 XT to take on the reigning champ. Armed with a new RDNA architecture, this card ditched the old GCN design, stepping into the ring to confront NVIDIA RTX 2070. AMD slapped a $399 price tag on it. By offering high-end gaming without the usual wallet-killing cost, the RX 5700 XT didn't just challenge NVIDIA, the Red Team dealt a real blow. NVIDIA had to adjust, and they responded later with the RTX Super Series. But beyond the numbers and the specs, the 5700 XT was about more than just being a good card. It was a way for AMD to make a comeback and say that they mean business. In a market flooded of overpriced, overhyped products, AMD reminded everyone that it is possible to launch a GPU with competitive pricing and solid performance. The low pricing of RX 5700 XT made NVIDIA a little uncomfortable. Yet at 1440p gaming, the 5700 XT often match or beat the competition in a variety of big-name titles. Whether you were venturing through Shadow of the Tomb Raider, riding the grassy plains in Red Dead Redemption 2, or navigating the post-apocalypse in Metro Exodus, the 5700 XT kept up without breaking a sweat. Sure, it didn't have ray tracing, but what mattered was raw, unadulterated performance, and that's where the 5700 XT excelled. It offered smooth, high frame rate gaming, delivering the goods for anyone who cared more about blasting through games at high speeds than watching ray tracing reflections in puddles. This makes the RX 5700 XT straight up a bargain, especially if you were all about 1440p or high-speed 1080p gaming. At first, the RX 5700 XT wasn't exactly smooth sailing. Early adopters faced crashes and graphical glitches that had some questioning their decisions. But AMD didn't leave those folks hanging. The company rolled out driver updates like clockwork, quickly addressing stability and performance issues. By the end of 2019 and into 2020, the 5700 XT was as stable as a well-oiled machine, and AMD continued to polish it even further. AMD kept refining the drivers, adding nifty features like Radeon Boost and Radeon Anti-Lag to give gamers even more performance, especially in demanding titles. These updates helped the 5700 XT stay relevant in a market that moves fast, proving that the card was far from a one-hit wonder. The new RDNA technology wasn't just about cranking out raw power. It was engineered with performance per watt in mind, which translated into better efficiency and a cooler, quieter experience. But RDNA wasn't just a one-off novelty, it was the foundation for AMD's future. The 5700 XT was the first card to feature RDNA, and it showed what AMD was capable of with this new, more scalable architecture. It was the precursor to what we'd see in next-gen consoles like the PS5 and Xbox Series X. Its influence would only grow stronger in GPUs with RDNA 2 and RDNA 3. Sure, the RX 5700 XT didn't have hardware ray tracing, but for many gamers, it didn't need to. The RX 5700 XT came out swinging with one of the best value plays we'd seen in years. At $399, it landed a clean punch right at the RTX 2070 ego. For gamers, they didn't feel like taking out a loan just to play at high settings. Availability at launch is surprisingly solid, and the 5700 XT was actually on shelves during its prime. That accessibility helped AMD build real momentum. Gamers could actually buy the card, install it, and enjoy their games instead of staring at out-of-stock notices. Even today, the 5700 XT still punches above its price tag, especially on the used market. It's one of those rare cards that aged well, and for raw price to performance, few can touch it. Scoring an average of 7.6, the RX 5700 XT comfortably lounges in the top 5 of AMD's greatest hits. It was enough to make the old GCN cards look like fossils. The RX 5700 XT was AMD's way of throwing down the gauntlet. It didn't need to be flashy to be iconic, it just needed to be great, and it was. Back in the late 2000s, the Radeon HD 5970 crashed the GPU party with 2 GPUs, each clocked at 725 MHz and 1 GB per GPU at 1000 MHz. Performance-wise, it is basically a crossfire setup of 2 Radeon HD 5870 combined into one card, which is convenient for gamers but slightly traumatic for power supplies at that time. Of course, like any overachiever, the HD 5970 had its quirks. Some games treated that second GPU like it wasn't there, and multi-GPU scaling was hit or miss. Along with compatibility issues, games have higher risks of crashing. Still, despite its occasional drama, the HD 5970 captured the spirit of its time. It is big, bold, and pushes boundaries. At launch, the Radeon HD 5970 didn't just raise the bar. With 2 GPUs, it chewed through benchmarks flawlessly. DirectX 11 games bowed in submission, and multi-monitor Eyefinity setups that typically induce migraine ran with surprising smoothness. It was the kind of performance that made gamers nod approvingly, although their power bills spiked noticeably. The HD 5970 delivered performance on par with a Radeon HD 5870 crossfire setup without the cable clutter. Unfortunately, HD 5970 didn't stick around for long, and with a TDP of 294 watts, it ran hotter than many GPUs. It requires a cooling setup that could double as a wind tunnel, and while it crushed games in its prime time, wasn't exactly kind. As sleeker, more efficient architectures rolled out, the HD 5970 with its older Terascale 2 architecture and modest 2 GB VRAM, it started to feel like a vintage piece. Driver support for HD 5970 followed the classic GPU arc. It began with initial excitement and a couple of strong updates, then the inevitable slow fade as AMD shifted attention to its GCN graphics card. Still, during those golden years, the card held its ground. With a little help from driver tweaks and some community elbow grease, it could keep up with the times for a little while. The Radeon HD 5970 wasn't just fast, it was a full-blown engineering flex. Built on AMD's Terascale 2 architecture, it shoved 2 Cypress GPUs onto a single PCB. AMD managed to cram 3200 stream processors, 160 texture units, and 64 ROPs into a slab of silicon. It tested the limits of what a cooling system could reasonably handle, without sounding like a jet engine. AMD even handpicked the GPUs to run at 1.05 volts, because when you're pushing nearly 300 watts, every decimal counts. Feature-wise, it brought out the big guns, including DirectX 11, OpenGL 4.4, and Crossfire Eyefinity, which meant multi-display gaming on up to 6 monitors. Of course, assuming you had that many monitors and an actual reason to use them. When the Radeon HD 5970 hit shelves at $699, it wasn't exactly a budget-friendly option, unless your definition of budget in 2009 included liquid-cooled rigs and RGB lighting. But for that price, you were getting 2 high-end GPUs. You can get them all in one gloriously oversized package, making it the go-to choice for gamers who wanted flagship performance conveniently. But with its 300mm plus length, it meant you needed a case with enough clearance. As newer, more efficient GPUs entered the market with better driver support, the value of HD 5970 started to fade. What was once a performance bargain slowly transformed into a pricey, power-hungry relic. Scoring a solid 7.8, the Radeon HD 5970 carved out its legacy as both a technical marvel. It brought jaw-dropping performance to the table and made it clear AMD wasn't playing around in the high-end GPU arena. But that kind of ambition came with trade-offs like chugging electricity, running hotter than a toaster, and early obsolescence. It wasn't built for the long haul, but while it lasted, it ruled the GPU market. The RX 480 crash-landed into the mid-range GPU scene as AMD finally tired of watching NVIDIA hog the spotlight. This is their first 14nm FinFET card, which is proven to be sleeker, faster, and actually efficient. Priced at $199 for the 4GB and $229 for the 8GB version, for once, affordable gaming wasn't cue for running crises at 12 frames per second. The RX 480 handled modern titles with DirectX 12 and Vulkan like it had something to prove, and it also showed up ready for virtual reality. The RX 480 comes up with numbers that made even seasoned gamers double-check the spec sheet. It came with 2,304 stream processors, a boost clock of 1,266 MHz, and a theoretical 5.8 teraflops of pure, pixel-pushing power. It didn't just look good on paper, it actually delivered real-world benchmarks that held its own against the GTX 970. This graphics card even nipped at the heels of the GTX 1060, especially when running games on DirectX 12 or Vulkan. AMD's driver support for the card was as thought to be reliable as our dad's home-cooked meals, but the company consistently getting better with every update. The Radeon software suite actively pushed out features like Radeon Chill to keep your GPU cool when it wasn't working hard. There are also enhanced sync to prevent screen tearing, while Wattman can squeeze every ounce of performance without lighting your PC on fire. Years after its debut, the RX 480 was still turning heads. With solid driver support, this legendary mid-range card is a marathon runner, not just a sprinter. The RX 480 wasn't just another graphics card, it was a whole new breed of AMD GPU, thanks to the Polaris 10 GPU architecture. It was efficient, effective, and ready to go, but the real genius of Polaris 10 lay in its details. The primitive discard accelerator can help the card push unnecessary data out and make geometry processing more efficient. It also introduced hardware schedulers for advanced data management. Although AMD crammed high-end features into a card that didn't cost a fortune, it gave gamers the flexibility to choose based on what they needed, whether they were looking for solid 1080p performance or a little extra oomph for 1440p gaming. The RX 480 ran on a 150 watts TDP, which meant it was reasonably efficient. That kept power supply requirements low, and most gamers didn't need to upgrade their PSU as well. With an average score of 7.8, the RX 480 earned its spot as one of AMD's standout GPUs. It didn't just show up, it made a mark, leaving a lasting impact on gamers and the industry alike. In 2020, the world was locking down, GPUs were selling out, and AMD decided it was the perfect time to release the RX 6800 XT. It came with real-time ray tracing, enhanced rasterization performance, and aggressive pricing to stir the pot. The 6800 XT wasn't another almost-there card, and its performance can compete with the RTX 3080 in certain games. Timing of the launch couldn't have been better. Gamers were stuck at home and they were desperate for upgrades. After years of being the budget-friendly and somewhat underwhelming execution, AMD finally dropped a high-end card that made headlines. Performance leadership isn't something AMD tossed around lightly with the RX 6800 XT. When this card landed, it didn't just go toe-to-toe with NVIDIA RTX 3080. The RX 6800 XT occasionally outpaced it in certain games. Armed with 72 compute units and a boost clock pushing 2250 MHz, the 6800 XT wasn't there to almost deliver 4K gaming. That 16 GB of GDDR6 memory also didn't go unnoticed. While some other cards were busy trying to convince us 10 GB VRAM was enough, the ample memory of RX 6800 XT ensures texture-rich and stutter-free scenes. The RX 6800 XT didn't just show up, flex its specs, and vanish into the tech void like previous one-hit wonders. For gamers, it stuck around like a dependable friend and offers excellent longevity. From day one, AMD's Adrenalin software has been pumping out updates to fix bugs, boost frames, and occasionally sneak in new features that make you wonder why you ever considered upgrading. With support for DirectX 12 Ultimate and Vulkan baked in, the 6800 XT hasn't just been keeping up with the latest games, it can be considered future-proof before it's eaten alive by the next shader-heavy monstrosity. Built on the RDNA 2 architecture, the RX 6800 XT wasn't a mere incremental update. It was AMD's way of playing catch-up, and it had infinity cache to prove it. Its 128 MB cache could slash latency, trim power draw, and smoothen 4K gaming. Before RDNA 2, AMD could only watch NVIDIA toss around ray-traced shadows with relative ease. The 6800 XT has 72 ray accelerators, and while it didn't dethrone the RTX 3080 in raw ray tracing, but it definitely closed the gap. But AMD didn't stop there, it also comes with variable rate shading and mesh shaders. The RX 6800 XT was priced at $649, and it wasn't cheap, but it wasn't trying to be. AMD was trying to be fair, and it's a decent pricing for the performance and features offered. Scalpers, crypto miners, and supply chain chaos turned MSRP into something mythical. But even after the market was fully chaotic, the RX 6800 XT still made sense. Fast forward to now, and this card still holds strong in the resale ring. The RX 6800 XT remains one of the smarter choices in high-end gaming. It's the rare piece of tech that kept its dignity through a pricing nightmare and walked out the other side as a GPU that is still worth the buy. With an average score of 8.4, the RX 6800 XT cements its spot in AMD's GPU Hall of Fame. This wasn't just another graphics card, it was AMD's "We Are Back" moment. The RX 6800 XT didn't just chase NVIDIA heels, it took a swing at the high-end throne with enough power, polish, and pricing strategy. As the first GPU built on a 28nm process, the Radeon HD 7970 marked a generational leap that had every overclocker, benchmark junkie, and silicon enthusiast raising an eyebrow or two. It was AMD's way of flexing real technological muscle. At launch, the HD 7970 didn't just flirt with the top spot, it simply dominated. As the fastest single GPU card of its time, it swaggered past the competition and planted the Graphics Core Next or GCN architecture flag firmly in the GPU battlefield. The GCN architecture went on to power multiple GPU generations and quietly laid the groundwork for AMD's future compute ambitions. When the HD 7970 dropped, it didn't just whisper next-gen, AMD screamed it through a megaphone. Armed with 2048 stream processors, a 925 MHz core clock, and 3 GB of GDDR5 memory running at 384-bit bus, this card made it very clear it wasn't here to play around. With a peak compute performance of 3.79 teraflops, the HD 7970 easily put the GTX 580 in its rearview mirror, especially when running DirectX 11 titles and doing compute-heavy workloads. In 2011, the HD 7970 made ultra settings at high resolution went from dream to default gaming mode. Its 264 GB per second memory bandwidth meant it could generate sprawling game worlds without breaking a sweat. And if you were feeling extra, AMD's Eyefinity tech let you distribute your game across multiple monitors. While many GPUs aged like milk, the HD 7970 would be a miracle of longevity. Long after most cards would have been collecting dust or demoted to spare rig status, the 7970 kept showing up to game night and performing respectably at that. AMD showered gamers with driver updates from Catalyst to Radeon software. The tools kept evolving, and so did the card's compatibility and performance. Whether it was tweaks for new game engines or better system monitoring features, AMD made sure the 7970 never felt completely outdated. With the debut of Graphics Core Next or GCN architecture, AMD delivers smarter compute handling and better parallelism. With the zero-core power feature, when idle, the HD 7970 practically went into hibernation mode, sipping a mere 3 watts. And because AMD never shied away from extra features, the 7970 came ready with Eyefinity 2 for panoramic multi-monitor gaming and HD 3D support for a dose of stereoscopic immersion. When it hit the shelves at $549, the HD 7970 was clearly gunning for the high-end crowd. It wasn't cheap, but for those craving top-tier performance and bleeding-edge features, it was a worthy investment. Its blend of power, efficiency, and future-forward architecture made it a strong contender for gamers who valued long-term relevance. Then came the curveball in June 2012 when AMD dropped the HD 7970 GHz edition. Clocked higher and priced lower at $499, it gave a noticeable performance bump without breaking the bank, proving AMD knew how to sweeten the deal mid-cycle. As time went on, price cuts brought the card down to $479 and eventually $429, opening the door for more budget-conscious gamers to get in on the action. With a final score of 8.6 out of 10, the HD 7970 truly earns its place as one of the standout GPUs of its era. From the very first benchmark to its lasting impact on the industry, It set new standards in performance, efficiency, and innovation. The card wasn't just about raw power. It was a statement from AMD that they were ready to compete at the highest level. Throughout its history, AMD has demonstrated a remarkable ability to challenge, and at times, surpass its competitors in the GPU market. By focusing on innovation, efficiency, and value, AMD has introduced technologies that not only meet but often exceed the expectations of gamers and professionals alike. AMD's journey reflects a relentless pursuit of excellence and a dedication to pushing technological boundaries. Their ability to adapt, innovate, and deliver value has solidified their reputation as a leader in the GPU space, often setting the pace for the industry and compelling competitors to elevate their offerings.